I've been more focused lately, and that's by design because I've been exercising my focus, and I exercised my focus on my walk this morning. I took my phone with me, but I didn't check it. I promised myself I wouldn't check it. I wouldn't take it out of my pocket. I wouldn't look at it. I wouldn't pick it up if it rang. And I succeeded at that. I didn't let my phone distract me from the focus on my walk, except for this one moment where I brushed the outside of my pocket just to make sure it was still there. And it was still there, and I kept walking and I didn't check it. But as I was walking, I wanted to exercise my focus visually, and so I focused on different landmarks along my path. I focused on a corner in the distance. I focused on a stoplight, a pair of trees, a bridge, and some other landmarks. And I was mindful of my surroundings, even though I maintained my focus. There were cars going by, and they were loud, and there were people going by. And I was mindful of all of that. I was very present where I was, while still staying focused on each destination. And I arrived at this bridge, and there were some construction workers underneath it, and I broke focus for a minute because I was distracted. I was curious about what they were doing. They were working underneath this bridge, this overpass, fixing the metal beams underneath. And they had one of those bucket trucks, and they were up under the bridge, and they were fixing it. And so I walked by, and I still focused on different landmarks along my way, and I arrived at a park. And when I got into the park, it has this paved path all around it, and I thought that I would just walk the path around the park. There are different ways to veer off from the path, different distractions that take you into the woods, and I'll explore those on some other trip. But on this trip, I stayed on this paved path around this park, and I changed the exercise that I was doing from a visual focus exercise to just focusing on the sound of my footsteps. And I could hear my feet hitting the pavement with every step. And it rained a little bit this morning, and so I could hear my feet hitting the pavement, and they made a different sound when I walked across muddy patches on this path. And they made almost no sound when I walked across sandy patches on this path. But I focused on the sound of my footsteps, and there were other sounds around me. There were cicadas, there were crickets, there were some cars that I could still hear off in the distance. But for the most part, it was quiet, and I could hear my footsteps. And I got to the end of the park, and there was a building there. It's where the restrooms are, and there was a bicycle parked outside of the building, and this bicycle had these plastic bags hanging over the back of it. There are these reddish, pinkish bags that you would typically get at an Asian market, plastic bags. And so I passed this bike, and I got back onto the road, and I was still trying to listen to my footsteps, but the cars were too loud, and I couldn't hear my footsteps, but I tried. And I got to this bridge again. I was back to this overpass where these construction workers were working on it underneath with their bucket truck. And I thought about how they were working in the middle of traffic, how they were focused on their job in the middle of all these distractions and all of this danger, because they were working under this bridge, and there were cars going by, and there was noise, and there was the chance of getting hit if you weren't careful. And I thought to myself, what a skill these people must have to be able to focus on their job with all of these distractions and all of this danger around them. And I wondered how much of that transferred to their everyday lives. And I continued on my walk, and I couldn't hear my footsteps anymore. And it made me realize that even when one practices tuning out all of these distractions Sometimes the skills are not enough. Sometimes you really do need that quiet space away from distractions to really focus on the things that you want to do. And so I kept walking, and it must have been about 10 minutes, and this bicycle went past me again. And I recognized it. I recognized the bags on the back, I recognized the color of the bike, and there was the guy riding the bike. And I kept walking, and I switched back to my focus exercise of looking at landmarks on the way. And eventually, I got back home to my quiet, distraction free place.